Another day, another glorious day of the UKIP war continuing on. And oh boy, um, does it just continue on. It continues on and on and on. So last time where we left off on this update, it was, of course, being thrown around that Elon Musk might be willing to come in and fund a alternative potential split-off party of reform, meaning that you would be splitting the right-wing vote in the UK 3 separate ways. We still don't know if that is a thing that it could happen. Rupert Lowe is gone, well, I might join the Conservatives, I might not. Who knows? I might join this third thing. Still, of course, rumours that that third thing might be Dominic Cummings, aka the Startup Party. So we don't know. But Farage and, of course, Lowe have been at it since then on social media, completely knocking seven bells out of each other constantly. Not only that, Lee Anderson getting involved as well in like really weird ways, like, you know, some little twee weedy boy who hides behind the school bully Farage to get in and just go, get him, Farage. You know, really weird. But it is apparently getting legal. There are, of course, legal threats being thrown around. Whether Rupert Lowe has actually gone through with any of these legal threats yet, I'm not 100% certain, because I think we have heard about it now. Maybe they materialize by the time this video comes out. I don't know. But still, nothing too concrete on that, except Rupert Lowe has, quote, contacted his lawyers. Who knows what's going to happen there? But yes, this is going to get, I think, quite legal. And when this does get quite legal, there will be a phase called discovery. And that is where we could find out a ton of stuff where it comes to like the inner workings of reform. And that is why I want Rupert Lowe to go through with this, because there will be a ton of revelations that come out. I can guarantee you now, if this happens. So please, Rupert Lowe, go after Farage, go after reform, sue them, because people like me will feed very well on all that information that comes out. However, we're not talking about Rupert Lowe, Nigel Anderson, Lee Anderson, or Farage today. No, instead, we're going to have a look at the last person Nigel Farage fell out with, and that would, of course, be Benhabib. So he has been also, if you notice, been doing the media round as well, having a go at Farage as well. So we're going to have a look at what he wrote just today, in fact, well, yesterday, in fact, when this video comes out, on Conservative Home, to see what his big gripe about all this is and why he thinks potentially, if Farage doesn't step aside, according to him, the entire project is doomed. So let's have a look at what he's got to say. But before we get into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button down below. There's links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can well buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So before we begin, let us crack on into this. So this, of course, coming from Conservative Home with Benhabib, saying that unless Farage allows Reform UK to grow bigger than himself, the whole project is doomed. And bear in mind, this is what a lot of the people have been saying for quite a while, that every single thing that Farage has been involved with, he always gets into these types of arguments, and they has falling outs with people. And there's the numerous thing that has been continually coming up time and time again this week, that if Farage is having this tougher time with like 5 MPs, you know, controlling them, how on earth would he deal or keep control of a larger party? He couldn't. It would be chaos. And I think a lot of people are really starting to realize that, because we are now seeing a lot of now ex-reform voters or ex-reform party members coming and speaking out about why they've now left reform. So that's a very interesting, very, very interesting admission by some of these people. But like I say, this continues. How long this will go on for, I don't know, but we're eating well. So let's crack on into this. So, Reform's UK's performance in the polls is not matched by its performance from within. The alleged picture is now a serene duck paddling very furiously under the water is the inverse for Reform. This particular duck is now flapping its wings, making a heck of a noise, but its web feet are now still. For I like that. Basically, him painting a picture of a very lame duck, which I've said before, I think is the case, because I will bring this up. Last week, 9 by-elections there were last week, and Reform did not win a single one. Over 200 plus by-elections since the last general election. Reform only have won 12. I think it speaks for itself at the moment. Yeah, Farage. Oh, he's so popular. Why isn't this then converting into electoral wins? Because that's what we saw in the lead up to the last general election. Not for Reform, but for predicting the fortunes, of course, the Liberal Democrats and Labour as well. Again, a lot of people, and I put this to people, and they can't explain it. But of course, they panic about Farage. And as I keep on saying, I will not panic about Farage until I actually see reasonable cause to. But anyway, back to this. So Farage is, of course, the consummate performer and campaigner, but he is not a good leader. To lead, you must actually recognize you need to now broaden and deepen your pool of talent. Yep. Encourage and develop your colleagues, give them tools with which they can progress and listen to and support them. That is never going to happen. We saw this back in the UKIP days. Farage would never give anyone that chance or that opportunity. Why is he going to do this now? So for Nigel, colleagues are, of course, an irritation. So dull as to now to have to manage them. They should just get out of his way so he can do his thing. His approach works for anyone with the gift of the gab, and he's not serious about governing. Until he appointed himself leader of Reform, he had never actually led a party, which he had a serious chance, of course, breaking through our two-party system. He had always been on the sidelines, protesting, not offering solutions, just protesting. And that is still what he is doing today. And Farage has never offered any solutions. I would call out Benhabib right now. Why did you join Reform if that's what you are saying about Farage, that he has never offered any solutions? What does that say about the current status of the Reform Party now? That is actually a very telling admission. I would say a lot of that. Anyway, but the political landscape is, of course, very different now. A new party could well win the next general election. Again, no evidence that that is the case. But Farage has not revised his script. With the general election, when the general election was, of course, called, he had been at least absent from the political fray for over 4 years, was not going to stand. He tweeted, of course, the following morning that the US election was far more important, and followed up with, of course, another tweet declaring that 6 weeks was not enough time for which to make any impact. He was right about that. But what he had not appreciated was that the party was already set to win seats. Again, X'd out on that. Massively X'd out on that. Could they have won those seats without Farage? I don't think so. And I don't think that Reform can survive without Farage either. So, when he, of course, realized there was a real chance of winning, he appointed himself the leader of Reform and then booted out Tony Mack, a candidate for Clacton, and even the first of the many good loyal people now to be sacked. He then gave himself that very plum seat to himself, and that Tony was completely left heartbroken and out of pocket. Bear in mind, this is something that has been continuing on, that is now getting reported on, that this is coming up a lot, that a lot of people who again got, bought into reform, they are now being sacked and replaced by loyal Faragists, which to me is now setting the stage for what we are getting is a revolution from the top down, where Farage will remain in place and he will gain and still have complete control of the party. But it looks like he's made a change. It looks like Yusuf has changed the party, that it's more democratic. I don't think that's going to happen. So, winning, of course, 5 seats in the election. One was won by a paper candidate, and of course confirmed a second in 98 others, should have been at least a signal enough that everything in British politics had now changed. On a shoestring, and of course within a couple of years, reform had of course placed itself now into mainstream politics. The country was and is crying out to be rescued. Is it really based on reform policies? I don't think so. I don't think so. So, with that realization, there should now also have come the realization that this duck was far better start paddling. It became vital that the structure of the itself properly attached now to the best people to start making policies and getting ready now to form a government. And that's very true. If you are apparently, as Farage often claims, literally about to win the next general election and take government, then you should be ready with policy and the ability to form a government, to actually lead. And I will tell you this now, if somehow Farage does win the next general election, things will go from bad to worse to dire very quickly. Because Reform UK are going to make some dumb decisions, they're going to make some dumb policy, and you will see probably a disaster worse than Liz Truss. That I can guarantee you. So, back to Benhabib. That is, of course, is the party that I commenced my campaign for the democratization of the party. With a proper process, checks and balances introduced, a proper party executed, could have been formed to do, of course, the heavy lifting. Well, Farage spread his wings now across the country. He, however, has completely shirked it. Do not believe Farage when he said he has democratized the party. He is not telling the truth. Again, very true on this. And now we're going to get some dirt dished on reform. Nigel controls reform. He is neither serious nor does he appreciate the importance now of a proper structure. He publicly acknowledges that he could be prime minister, but he does not understand what is required to get there and what he must be done if he does. Rupert Lowe and I, on the other hand, are used to building organizations. We recognize that the reform is actually to win the next election and deliver for the people. Then it needs to start paddling and hard. The reward we both got for being constructively critical was to be set aside. In Rupert's case, Nigel has sought to vilify him. Increasingly, absurdly, the complaint now to the police over, quote, hurty words, and every allegation against Rupert is false. Well, we'll see what happens when that trial comes, if the police decide to press charges. That may be why Rupert Lowe hasn't yet decided to start legal proceedings. Maybe his lawyers are like, well, okay, if this is all false and the police don't find any evidence, then at that point you can go into Farage. So who knows? Maybe that is going to happen a bit further down the line. Like I say, we'll find out very soon, I suspect. So, dozens upon dozens now of good people in Reform's grassroots have also now been set aside in this very similar fashion. Others now have quit. Over the last few months, I have been inundated with people pleading for help, sharing now their awful stories. Well, you should be sharing those awful stories. I really wish you would. Like, I really wish you would, because there have been a couple of people about there's some councillors. That's it. Derbyshire, down in Derbyshire, a group of reform councillors have now quit the party over Farage in this argument. And that was a couple of days ago, I believe, when all that happened. So yeah, that that is very interesting how that has shaked out. I'm very interested seeing if that maybe continues on that. But back to this. So let's finish this off. Remember, these people, of course, not paid employees. They've given up their free time, and even some have left paid employment now to help the party. It is these people that, of course, laid the groundwork for Farage to become an MP, yet Reform has not hesitated to attack them, and in some cases, wrongly now ruin their reputations. Unless Nigel actually wakes up what is actually required to deliver the country to safety, unless he finally allows the party to grow bigger than himself, as he never did, UKIP, Reform will fail. Sadly, there is now little sign of that. And yeah, this is just UKIP 2.0. It was always the case. I've been saying that for a while. This is just new UKIP with a different shade of color and a new name, but it is still UKIP 2.0. It is still the Farage show on this. But let's see what the comments have to say in this. Someone else says, yeah, maybe you should all learn to grow in a very reasonable way instead of demanding things are all done in your own way and time frames. Someone else says here, blaming Farage for the Labour win. All Farage did was allow Labour to win a ridiculously large majority, way beyond their capabilities. The shape of any career, of course, reflects the nature of a person's innate character. Farage is, of course, a trader, and anyone who has worked or managed traders will understand their fundamental makeup. Traders are extremely good at what they do, but they are not tuned in to the need for processes, governance, and organizational development. Everyone is, of course, different. Horses for courses. So, yeah, someone else says here, Farage was, of course, very deliberately sidelined by Cummings and Johnson during the referendum because he was seen as a decisive figure who would weaken the Leave cause. Recent events, of course, go some way now to substantiating that decision. I have no idea why Trice and Habib were not welcomed into the Conservative Party, or perhaps they, of course, deliberately chose Brexit reform. On that face of it, they do seem very typical material public school successful business careers with now independent means. Indeed, not unlike Sunak. So, oh, yes, these people were good, but however, they're very Sunak-like, aren't they? And we know what many of the Conservatives think about Sunak. Oh dear. Someone else says here, many people are crying out for a feasible alternative to the Budgeon's turn main parties. You've now comprehensively hailed. Italy's Maloney's fraternity won 4%, now 30% in the polls. So he's not outside the possibility that something similar could happen here. We'll see. But you have to understand, Italy's a completely different system. But there you go. Of course, some point out, it was, of course, Maloney who said, if I were British, I would be a Tory. There you go. Anyway, someone else said, we would today at least have 100 more Conservative MPs if our party had been, of course, fair to Ben, Richard, and Trice and Nigel Farage after the general election in 2019. We would have brought many of their, quote, team into the party and appointed some even as peers and put them into the candidates list. Sadly, the Remainers and the Wets dominated the party and kept them out. We did not learn from that. Of course, still blaming the Remainers and the, quote, Wets of the party for the disaster of what happened and unfurled after 2019, not realizing that a lot of what was wrong in the Tory party was still what was along before that as well. But there you go. Anyway, dearie me, there is a lot of, quote, hope springs eternal here. There will be no Habib Lowe party, just as UKIP became completely irrelevant when the wannabes in leadership took over when Farage left. This pair are complete wannabes who, like many of them before, will just sit on the sidelines whining, but reluctant to put in now the hard yards, whilst Farage just gets on with it. Yeah, Farage just gets on with it. Totally not. I never, of course, wanted Lowe after his treachery in 2019, but once elected, he started doing some good things. It is a shame, of course, his ego took over, supporting Tommy Robinson, which Habib also now tacitly supports. I know you're all desperate for reform to fall apart, but it's not going to happen. Um, don't think so. Someone else said here, oh, reform won't fall apart, but it will wither on the vine. After the way that Lowe has been treated, along with many other people over the years by Farage, what incentive do able, consequential people have to become reform MPs? They've all got far better things to do than wait to be stabbed in the back the moment they start to think of themselves or even contradict the glorious leader. But in the meantime, reform will, of course, be a very attractive proposition for people of borderline sanity, fringe interests, and how shall I put this, eventful personal lives that will suit Farage just fine. But a serious alternative to government, it won't be. He's got that right. Got that right in one. It doesn't take, of course, much wit to realise that a parliamentary party can't even manage to avoid public infighting, which only got 5 MPs, is not going to be seen by the public as a potential party of government. Showing at least a smidge of professionalism might be a good idea. Someone else says here, Farage is, of course, a brilliant protest politician with delusions of government. He has, of course, been very effective at criticizing the EU as an MEP for decades, but no doubt he will be very good at being a critical opposition politician in Parliament. What Farage doesn't offer is team leadership skills, able now to establish a party fit for government, run by a cabinet rather than one autocratic individual. There is a future for reform as a right wing protest party, but frankly, without Farage, the talent will, of course, collapse just as UKIP did. It's simultaneously its biggest asset and why its success will be limited. Um, Someone else says here in response to that, quite. But how much of this is, of course, down to Farage's very poor leadership skills or even the ruthlessness now needed to eliminate Lowe because he was dragging the party away from its long fought for mainstream legitimacy towards the new version of the BNP being funded by a deeply, increasingly unpopular Elon Musk. Hell hath no fury like a reformer scorned. Fury isn't so how many people used to love Nigel and Trump and now can't stand them anymore. Indeed. Um, let's see if there's any more good ones. Yep, someone else does see it. Sadly, you could see this happening from a very long way off. Farage is not a team player and is clearly not a very good leader. In many ways, him and Johnson are just two peas in a pod. Unfortunately, Farage clearly struggles with people who he sees as rivals instead of trying to bring them along, guiding them and putting them to the best use. He gets rid of them. The danger is now that Habib and Lowe could quite easily quit and set up their own party, and I would suspect take a large number of reform voters with them, thus now splitting the vote into three parties of the right. The only winner here would be the shambles that is the Labour Party. I don't think it would just be the Labour Party that would profit from that, because as we've always said, Conservatives quietly seem to forget that there is, the Lib Dems. Oh dear. Yeah, this is never going to stop being funny. This is never ever going to stop being funny, to be honest. And the fact that Benhabib also trying to get his money's worth out of this, because if you remember when all the stuff happened to Benhabib this didn't trigger a lot of other stuff either, but the Rupert Lowe stuff clearly has. And Benhabib is now getting his, getting his tuppence in as well. But yeah, what is going to happen to reform? What is going to happen to the future? Well, I'll tell you what, it doesn't look good. And as always, and as we've said, we've been pointing out those comments, we've pointed out for quite a while, reform is an absolute paper tiger. Absolute paper tiger. And I'll tell you what, the funniest thing to happen would be if Rowe and Habib split off to create a new party and split the right-wing vote even more. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy. Would that be hilarious? That would be hilarious. But as always, let me know what you think down below so far. And ultimately, there's a chance even more stuff could have happened by this time this video happens. So, let's all just enjoy the ride because it is hilarious to watch. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.